Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of the WOW History Channel. My name is Ron Guth, and the purpose of this channel is to teach you about history in a way that you may have never considered before. I figure if it's something that makes me say wow, then you might get a kick out of it too. With that in mind, I ran across an incredibly interesting set of books from 1911 called The Photographic History of the Civil War in 10 volumes. My friends at Early American History Auctions will be selling this 10 book set in their May auction, so if you get really excited about these books, you'll have a chance to purchase them then. Each of the 10 books in the set averages about 350 pages, making 3,500 pages in the complete set. There's an average of approximately one picture per page, resulting in at least 3,500 pictures, and the actual count is actually closer to 3,600. Now, these were images made primarily by the famous photographer Mathew Brady, who traveled extensively during the Civil War to capture the people and events as they happened, and by others who took advantage of the new technology of photography in their studios and out in the field. Now, here's a copy, or this is what the book looks like. Again, this comes in 10 volumes. It's got gold lettering on the spine. This is volume number 9. And on the front, you can't really see it in this light, but there's an embossed emblem here of 2 flags and 2 wreaths. So I guess this symbolizes the Union and the Confederacy being joined as one. But this is a copy of the book here. Now, the sheer volume of photographs in these books means that there are many that you've probably never seen before, because modern textbooks have limited space and they include only those pictures that they consider to be important. Unfortunately, I have to do the same thing because if I want to do all 350 images in this book, obviously that would be a very long video. So we're not going to do that here. So I've pulled out 10 images from this 9th volume that were my favorite. The subtitle of this 9th volume is called Poetry and Eloquence. And I think what the authors were trying to convey in this volume was that art and literature continue to be produced even as the war raged on. Throughout volume 9, the pictures are interspersed with poems, songs, and narratives that explain what the pictures represent. Now, as an alternative to buying the physical books, which can be quite expensive to purchase and to ship, you can find digital versions on Amazon for as little as $12.99. So let's go through the pictures. Here's picture number 1. This is the title page from the book. You'll notice at the top that this is called the Semi-Centennial Memorial Edition. Semi-centennial means half a century, which in this case is 50 years after the bombing of Fort Sumter in 1861, which was the beginning of the Civil War. The editor-in-chief of this compilation of images was Francis Trevelyan Miller, who had the incredible task of gathering, cataloging, and presenting the thousands of images contained in the 10-volume set. The publisher is shown on this page as the Review of Reviews Company. The publication date was 1911, which means that the work is now in the public domain and not subject to copyright infringement, because anything published prior to 1923 in America is considered to be in the public domain. Here's picture number 2. One of the literary giants whose work appears in this book is Walt Whitman. Prior to reading this biography presented here, I only knew Walt Whitman as the author of Leaves of Grass, which I also confess to never having read. But here we find out, however, that Walt had a brother who was injured in the Battle of Fredericksburg. Walt went to care for him and then served as an army nurse for 3 years and continued in government service until 1873. According to this biography, Whitman died in 1892 in, quote, cheerful poverty, end quote, whatever that means. Here's picture number 3. We read about the battles of the Civil War and we quantify the deaths by the body counts, which were incredibly high in those few short years. Today, the cities of the South that were essentially destroyed in the Civil War have been rebuilt, so it is shocking to see the devastation that actually occurred during the war. This picture shows the ruins of Charleston, South Carolina, and this was not an exception. This was the norm in many of the southern cities. Here's picture number 4. In this picture, leading officials from South Carolina inspect Fort Sumter, which had been bombarded by the Confederates and abandoned by Major Anderson 2 days before. The officials are shown greeting 2 soldiers beside a large cannon. The officials are in coattails and top hats. The loss of Fort Sumter to the Confederates was a major blow and a wake-up call for the Union Army. Picture number 5. Nothing was sacred during the Civil War. Here we see a wrecked monument in a cemetery. Whatever stood above the pediment was blown to smithereens, and you can see fragments of it laying about. In the background, bombed out buildings stand guard. Here's picture number 6. This is one of the most haunting pictures in the book. Here's a kid who appears to have a basket in his lap, but that's actually his arm in a sling. In this narrative, he is listed as William Black, known as the youngest wounded soldier reported. What this book doesn't tell you is that his real name was Edward, not William, and that he enlisted in the Civil War as a drummer boy in 1861 at the age of 8. Get that, 8. When he was 10, he re-enlisted and served with the 1st Indiana Heavy Artillery until January 1866. When he was 12, an exploding shell crippled his left hand and arm. And that's what you see here in this picture. In this picture, he's around 12 years old. He looks a lot older, and that's probably because of what he had seen during the war. Now, Edward Black never healed completely, and he died in 1872 at the age of 19. According to the paragraph beneath this photograph, 100,000 soldiers on the Union side were no more than 15 years old. Picture number 7. Stonewall Jackson was one of the most famous Confederate generals. In an unfortunate accident of friendly fire, Stonewall Jackson was shot in the hand and arm by his own men. It looked like he was going to recover, but he died 8 days later, not from his injuries, but from pneumonia. Now remember that there were no antibiotics during the Civil War. So if you got an infection, whether it's septicemia from your injuries or pneumonia or any sort of bad cold even then, you were in trouble. And that's what happened to Stonewall Jackson. Now Jackson was buried in Lexington, Virginia, after his body lay in state at Richmond, and the picture at the bottom of the page shows his monument in the small cemetery. Picture number 8. Robert E. Lee posed for this picture in Richmond, Virginia, wearing a shirt that had been made especially for him by some of the ladies of that city. At lower right, if you look carefully, you can see his signature, R.E. Lee. Now this photograph was turned into hundreds, if not thousands, of what are known as carte de visite, or CDVs, literally cards of a visit. They were the equivalent of today's calling cards or business cards, and Lee signed many of them. Naturally, they are highly prized today because of his fame as the greatest Confederate general. Picture number 9. Civil War photographers such as Matthew Brady and others recorded every detail of the war, including dead and wounded soldiers as they lay on the battlefield. Some of the pictures were of actual slain soldiers, others were posed. Whether staged or not, this image shows a Confederate soldier on the battlefield of Spotsylvania with his long rifle across his body and his canteen and hat in the foreground. Historians believe that as many as 94,000 Confederate soldiers died in battle, and an additional 164,000 died of diseases and other causes. Picture number 10. Black soldiers were never used on the Confederate side, but they were recruited as early as 1862 on the Union side. This picture shows a line of black soldiers from an unidentified unit. They were among 150,000 black soldiers who fought on the Union side. Despite their service, they continued to suffer racism and discrimination, especially during the Reconstruction years following the Civil War. Those racist attitudes are actually quite evident in this book, surprisingly evident. Though published 50 years after the start of the war, it was considered acceptable and even, quote, good fun, end quote, in 1911 to include a racist poem entitled, quote, Sambo's Right to be Kilt, end quote. One of the lines from the poem is the caption for this picture. I'm not going to read it, I'll let you read it. Even the introduction to the poem itself described it as a, quote, humorous treatment, quote, of the subject of blacks serving in the Army. These are 10 of my favorite pictures from the book. In future installments, I'll be showing more pictures from not only this volume, but also from some of the other 9 volumes. I'll also get into how important it is to look carefully at historical pictures. There was a reason the photographer took the picture, and there's a story or a message that they were trying to get across. It's up to us to pay attention to the details in order to get the full picture. Thanks for viewing this video. If you like Wow History Channel, please consider becoming a subscriber and be sure to hit the like button. Feel free to leave a comment below and let me know if there is a particular subject you'd like to see on this channel. Have a great week. Goodbye.